This is part 2 of the interview podcast with Harlan
Jr.
Yes. So, doing what you do, tell us about your conceptual understanding of death, based in probably growing up very religious and being more spiritual now. So tell us about your concept of death.
Let me clarify. Are you talking about death, or are you talking about the spirituality of death and like the afterlife, or like what? Are you asking me what do I think?
Yes to both. Go with whatever
Okay.
you feel.
So that's a pretty loaded question. I have a pretty strange background. You know, I was raised a Jehovah's Witness. I was never baptized or anything like that, but I mean, I could read the Bible before I could walk probably, and going door to door and doing that whole thing. But I left home at 13, converted to the Church of Punk Rock and Death Metal, and was on the streets, took my family to court, and lived with a Catholic deacon for a minute who, basically was the enemy. Like in the Jehovah's Witness religion, they're basically like worshiping the devil. So I completely went to the other side, and from there to the occult. Probably see a lot of the tattoos on my body, or LaVey and Crowley and Lovecraft. But I've kind of touched, and Eastern medicine too, and Eastern spirituality. So my view on death is this, and it's something that I would say, probably anybody that was Islamic or Christian or Jewish could probably relate to. I mean, it's all kind of based in the Greek and the Hebrew scriptures in the Pentateuch, the first part of the Bible. So God, I think this is where a lot of misconceptions about heaven and hell and all the afterlife come out too, is when a lot of the current translations of the Bible of all those religions I just mentioned they were made by a man a long time later, by a church even worse, that had an intent, which was to make your money, control you, and especially in a lot of the European and Islamic cultures, we're talking about empires that were based on the church, and to this day, like in Islam, I mean, you got the religious leaders and the political secular leaders, they're still there ruling, and they rule by fear, and they rule by ignorance. They keep people dumbed down, and they keep people scared, and that's the biggest thing. I think people associate fear with death more than they associate spirituality with death, because they're afraid of dying. Everybody either, like, I don't know, completely doesn't think about it and rejects the notion of anybody who does and can't deal with it, or they embrace it, or they lie to themselves and everyone else and kind of fucking suppress it, and it manifests itself in other ways. But anyways, I digress. Let me get back to my point. It's this. So when God created the heavens and the earth and the inhabitants of the heavens, which were the angels, right? And then he took 7 days to make, the sea and the land and the air and the birds, and the, finally on the 6th day he made man, and on the 7th day he rested. So he made the original man and woman to live on a paradise earth. It's the story of Adam and Eve, right? They lived as perfect people, not immortally because they could die, or not eternally, because they could die, but they had everlasting life. So as long as they obeyed God, then they could live forever in paradise earth. And that's something very important that's overlooked, I think, a lot, because what it's saying is that the earth is for man, not heaven. That's for angels. hell is not mentioned in the Bible anywhere, and if God is love, which I believe God is love, and a lot more than that, but for something as simplistic and fucked up as the human mind and psyche, and you know, the way we are, and as flawed as we are, it's easy to be well, you know, to just be misled and get confused, and there, you know, everybody's got their different theories, but it's all right there. So we're not spirit creatures. We can't live in heaven. And when the angels came to the earth and took the daughters of man, they created the Nephilim, right? Which is why God sent the flood, because there was giants, and they were fucking evil people, giant evil people, killing, murdering, raping, and all of these things. So the angels weren't supposed to be here, or the fallen angels either, so any of them were not supposed to be here. And the challenge happened in the garden, which was that if they ate from the fruit, they would be like God, and they didn't need him anymore, that they can decide those things for themselves, and they would know everything like he does, and that's why he didn't want them to have it. So that was the challenge in the garden, right? And it's very clear that there was something afoul when Satan came and took the form of a snake, and you know what I mean? The whole fucking thing was evil and misled her and deceived her, and you know, but it also says the devil will appear as an angel of light, and basically that there's only one truth, and no, there's nothing anywhere that in the Bible that says all roads lead to God. There's nothing like that. It basically says in all of the religions I had mentioned that there's only one religion, and all the other ones, you know, for instance, let's say Jehovah's Witnesses were right. That means that the Catholics, Mormons, Baptists, Buddhists, whatever, are all actually worshiping the devil, because all those other gods that are not the one true God are demons trying to divert true worship away from God, right? So people have this fucked up conception of spirituality and our purpose. It says very clearly in the Bible that the reward for being a righteous man is, one of them is that the meek will inherit the earth. It doesn't say the meek will inherit heaven. We're going to inherit the earth. When the challenge is done, and I think about it like this. So if me and you are both good arm wrestlers, right? And I walk up to you and I say, I'm a better arm wrestler than you. And you say, no, I'm better. And you say, okay, let's settle this. Let's have a arm wrestling fucking championship at the bar next Tuesday at 6 o'clock. Okay, be there. So I go to the bar and you're sitting in the chair with your arm like this. And I walk up to you and I put a gun to your head and I pull the trigger. Did I beat you at arm wrestling?
No.
That's right. So God could not just destroy the devil when he issued that challenge in front of all the other angels in heaven, right there in that garden. He had to let the other angels see what would happen and then destroy the devil. You know what I mean? For doing what he did, which was rebelling against God. That's, you know, he gave them and us free will. You know, and loose.
I think I had a mentor that said this, but it probably comes from somewhere else, that God loved us so much he left us alone.
No, the saying in the Bible that comes from is that God loved the world so much that he gave us his only begotten son to pay a ransom sacrifice, so that we don't have to live under the Mosaic law anymore, and we can be forgiven for our sins instead of having our hands chopped off, our eyes put out, our firstborn killed, etc. You know what I mean? Which is what Islam is. You know, they live under Mosaic, you know, Abrahamic law and Mosaic law, because they don't acknowledge the existence of the Christ, which is the second half of the Bible where the ransom is paid. So, and the Jews too, neither one of them. They might recognize him as a prophet, but not as the Son of God.
Okay, got it.
And Jesus is the going to be the Prince of, you know, the earthly kingdom. Well, you know, basically he's God's son. He's the king. You know what I mean? He's the prince. He's the crown ruler. God gave him the earth because he died for it and for man. You know, he loved it so much that he gave it his own life. It took the form of a man, was tortured and pinned on a, you know, torture stake like a telephone fucking pole, not on a cross, by the way. That's all bullshit too. You know, there's let's get back to the point. So there's this misconception and fear involved with death. A lot of it comes from misinterpretation of scriptures that's been taught to people for thousands of fucking years. And I see that in death. And this the part of the point I'm getting at is that I walked into the Filipinos' houses straight from the Philippines, Mexican houses with 30 Mexicans living in it, you know what I mean? Black houses, crack houses, rich houses, poor houses. People die. Everybody's got that in common. We all are gonna die. And I'm gonna go pick you up, no matter where you are. And so I see how people die, and it really says kind of a lot about how they live their life, because who's there? You know, and what condition are you in? You know, what did you die of? Like all these things. You know, I think this is a person. You know, a lot of times you go in there and there's pictures of them all around the bed, and you know, their families, and they have kids and all this beautiful stuff. And really, death is what gives life contrast. It is contrast to life, because it's what makes you live and separates you from the dead, you know, or from the unconscious, or whatever, however you want to think about it, is the risks we take, and what our principles are, our morals are, you know, all these things that make us up and give us character or lack of character, is all based on our belief system and what we've been taught and what we've experienced and all of these things. What I think death is sleep. If you die and you're a bad person and you didn't try to obey God's laws, which are good. I mean, if you think about it, if we all obeyed God's fucking laws, the earth would be a pretty fucking cool place to be. No, never mind, because you couldn't just fuck or like drink or whatever, you know, that would kind of, well, no. It's an experience, I'm sorry, God. Anyway, what I'm getting at is this. We all have a choice every day on what we're gonna do with this life, because when we die, which could come at any time, and we all hope and assume that we're gonna live to be old, unless we have some ailment that we're, you know, born with, you know. I'm sorry for those of you who might have something that, you know, you're gonna die young of or whatever. I thought I was gonna die at 18, you know. I lived a hard life. I've lived 1,000 lives, I feel like, in 42 years. I feel like if I wrote a book about things that I've done and experienced in my years, people would just not believe it. It seems like fiction. I'm like the universe's greatest idiot, and it takes care of its fools. You know what I mean? Like I'm blessed through it all. There's some dark shit, you know, but it all happened so the other things could happen and give me perspective and give me insight and give me experience in things that were coming later that I needed in order to have a greater fulfillment of my life before my death. And really what life is about is that death, because how you live your life is gonna pretty much determine how you're gonna die. And when you die, you might be forgotten, or they could talk about you for centuries to come, or, you know, you could do something great, or you could do nothing at all. And death, and you see it, I see it when I look in their faces, and I've looked into a lot of the dead's faces and their eyes and other things, and you can see remorse, regret, shame. You can see pain. You can see peace.
They talk about because of the way that a lot of animals, like cows, are killed not in a kosher manner, that a lot of times you're eating the stress
right,
of how that's
released. Exactly. There's a hormone released when you're stressed out. Actually, there's a drug. Same thing. It's called chroma.
Chroma say what?
No, it's what's the hell? Adrenochrome. Your pineal gland produces it when you're dying or being terrorized, like terrified, truly like mortified, scared. Children's bodies produce it, and in their brain.
Doesn't DMT
DMT is also produced by the pineal gland at certain times naturally during life. Adrenochrome is, you have to basically milk the gland and torture a child or capture it while somebody's dying, like basically kill somebody and milk their pineal gland while they're dying, and it would secrete adrenochrome. There's actually people addicted to adrenochrome, and they sell it on the open market, if I'm not mistaken, in China, which is part of human trafficking. Why China is buying all these body parts from America, and there's some weird shit going on that, you know, I won't even get into. But death and dying, when you've held a dead baby in your arms, or had to take it from a mom who didn't want to let it go, covered in tumors, 4 months old. Then, as horrible as it might sound, that really makes you feel life in that death. In that death, that little baby that didn't get to live a life.
So I have a interesting relationship with death. I'm good at grieving, and I don't think of us necessarily being of the body, and I would say I grieve faster than other people, and I'm willing to put it in front of myself. Like very much put it in front of myself, because I don't want to draw it out for 6 months. I don't want to draw it out for 20 years. I want to just put it all in front of myself and be present and feel what's going on. Because when my brothers went with my mom to the hospital to view the body, and I stayed at my mom's house, and I just wanted to check in to see where I was present to it.
Yeah.
And I couldn't talk for the first 48 hours about my father dying, but I was present and feeling it in that time. And I didn't want to, part of it, I didn't want to, oh, you're going to go through this, you're going to feel this in 6 days.
Nobody
I
can
didn't
tell
want
you how
to
to feel.
Yeah,
That's all there is to it. You know, everybody handles it. I've seen, you know, a lot of times when I pick up bodies, these people are at home. You know, they're at hospice at home, like they were terminal, or they were just somebody that died and had a heart attack young, or just a kid that, you know, drowned in swimming. There's all kinds of people that die at home. And when people die at home, before we get there, we're the last guys there. That's why we're first responders too. When the paramedics fail, we're the first ones in, because we would do the removal and get them to wherever they're going, so the family doesn't have to sit there with a body. But it's still usually about 4 hours, and in that time, by law, you can be with that body for 3 days before it's removed. So some of these people, you know, sometimes people will sit there for a day or two with the body of their husband or whatever, and have their own process to deal with that death. And
So I wanted to kind of address some things and then wrap up.
Sure.
So life is about contrast. So what is one of the things that, like, one of the things when I quote people, or somebody quotes people, I always ask myself, and I've asked it for a long time, is like, how did they live? How did they die?
Right.
Because I think that's important to like really experience the full thing, because anybody could say something like smart, and sometimes somebody might have a certain level of mainstream success that we just think it's a good quote just because this person said it.
Right.
So I think it's very good to check in to see the full experience of what was going on. So what can you tell the people in the audience about life, like in a encapsulation? What's the meaning to life? You can take this however you want.
The meaning to life is to do God's will, to fill the earth and become many. Fuck a lot, have lots of babies, make them good babies, and teach them well, and teach them to love each other and to love God and to serve each other and to be selfless. And I think life is about giving, and the reason that there's a lot of problems in the world is because everybody wants to take. Everybody wants they want to come up. They want their, you know, they want their whatever.
I think a lot of times they don't give their best.
No, it's, a lot of times they're fake.
Yeah, yeah.
See, the rat race is real. You know what I mean? There's a certain part of yourself you compromise, that inner child, let's call it, that you're sacrificing in order to have that car, to have that home, to have those things that society tells you need to have to be a person or to be a contributing member of society. I left out, I did a lot of LSD and hallucinogenics and stuff when I was younger. A lot. I left home at 13, I'll leave it at that. And I was raised a Jehovah's Witness kid, so I wasn't allowed to do shit. And I went straight to the other end. And so, here's what I'm getting at. Life and death are a test and are part of an equation. We're all variables in that equation that was produced by a question that was asked at the beginning of what man knows is time, that between God and Satan in that garden. And all's this life that we are vibration, you know what I mean? Our DNA vibrates at a frequency. And that frequency can be tuned, you know what I mean? And I think we have a lot more power than we know.
What was that question?
What?
You said there was a question.
A question about, because we had eternal life before. There was no suffering, death, sickness, growing old. There was none of that. And even scientists to this day can't explain why we grow old. Our bodies are made perfectly, and there's no reason that our cells stop producing as quickly. They can't explain why that happens. Aging in the breakdown of the body is we were made perfectly, and the challenge in the garden was that the fruit of the knowledge of good and bad, the tree of good and evil, they called it, was that was the only tree in the garden that they weren't allowed to have the fruit from. And it was because God said, the day you eat from it, that day you will surely die. And keep in mind, God's days are much longer, lifetimes for us, generations of lifetimes. But they lived a lot longer back then too, because they were closer to perfection. But I'm talking about something completely different. The challenge was that if they ate the fruit, it wasn't because they would die, it was because they would know everything God knows. And he didn't want them to. He wanted it all for himself, basically. He put that notion into Eve, and Eve to Adam, and that was the challenge, that if man could choose, they would choose to worship Satan and not God, because Satan is the god of sin, you know what I mean? And man wants to sin. He doesn't want to follow your rules, right? Which is, it's the world we live in, you know what I mean? It's just that, I don't know. That's the challenge. If that's the answers your question, that was the challenge in the garden. It was about the authority and the sovereignty of God over man and all creation. But Satan wanted to be worshipped. He was the most beautiful. Lucifer was the most beautiful angel God created, he said. And I guess he was kind of vain too, and he wanted the angels to worship him and not God. So he was jealous.
Yeah. Awesome. Thank you very much for your time, and I'm glad I met you, and I look forward to doing this again. Yeah.
Absolutely. Can I say one last thing?
Yes.
Life. One thing I learned in my work, because I'm a crazy motherfucker. I don't know this guy, but I've been through a lot of shit. I've been dead before. I've been dead twice, and there was no white light, nothing like that. There is nothing. God said that your name will be written in the book of life, meaning that you'll be resurrected, the meek will inherit the earth. That's your reward. You get to live forever in a paradise earth without all the evil in it, without the sickness, death, and dying. See your dead loved ones resurrected, all that. I believe that. So death is terrifying for a lot of people because they did bad things and they think they're going to be tortured in hell. Don't believe that shit. If you fucked up, make it right. That's one thing I can tell you about seeing death every day, a lot of times a day, is a lot of people saying, I wish I would have done this, I wish I would have done that. Live every day like it might be your last, and just don't do bad shit to people. If you've done something wrong, apologize, own it, try to make the world a better place for generations to come, and pass the love on, not the hate. You know what I mean? Vote for Donald Trump.
Awesome, awesome. Peace.